Hello, hello. Welcome to the choir. My name is Aubrey, and I'm so glad you're here with us today. So, as you know, because you're doing this now, you can always enjoy our pre recorded services. We share them every week on YouTube, and so you can always access those. But if you're ever interested in joining a service live, we do meet on Zoom every Sunday at 11 a.m. Eastern. And so, if you're ever interested in joining that or just being in the loop about what's going on with the choir, what you're going to want to do is visit our website at thechoir.church and sign up for our email list. And every week we send out info about all things going on within our community, but also the link to that live YouTube service on Sundays. So you're definitely going to want to get signed up for that. So we're going to start off today just with a quick gratitude practice, just a few moments to really get us grounded in the present. So I want you to close your eyes and get yourself comfortable. If you don't feel comfortable closing your eyes, that's okay, but I find it's helpful for me. Sit in a comfortable position with your eyes closed and just start breathing in through your nose and out through your mouth. In through your nose and out through your mouth. And you're going to continue breathing as I speak, as I share a little bit. So, gratitude, we know gratitude is so important. And especially as, the world around us can be a stressful, scary, confusing, uncertain place. The practice of gratitude grounds us in what is good, and that matters. But another thing that gratitude does is it really brings us in and anchors us into the present. When so often it feels easy for us to slip into, fixating on the future and what's going to happen, or staying sort of stuck in the past and things that have happened before, rather than really being where we are now, being in the present. And gratitude causes us to be grateful for what is true now, right now in this moment, and to be in the present. And it does that also by really, we can bring in the five senses into that practice, into the practice of gratitude, to even deepen that present awareness. And so what I want you to do as you continue breathing in through your nose and out through your mouth, I want you to mentally list 5 things that you're grateful for. And not just that, but even to take it one step further, 5 things that you're grateful for, but one for each of your 5 senses. So I want you to think of one thing you're grateful for that you saw recently, something you saw that you're grateful for. I want you to think of something that you touched that you're grateful for, that touched you, whether physically or that touched you emotionally. Something that you can taste that you're grateful for. Something you can smell that you're grateful for. Something that you heard that you're grateful for. And if you can't find something to correlate with each of those senses, that's okay, but having at least 1 or 2 of those things on your list of 5 gratitudes that are attached to really tangible physical senses, right? Continuing to breathe in through your nose and out through your mouth. And seeing if you can incorporate this practice more regularly. Taking a moment to close your eyes, to really tune into your breath and take inventory of what you're grateful for, to really get you here in the present moment. One more deep breath in through your nose and out through your mouth. And when you're ready, you can slowly open your eyes.
This week's scripture comes from John chapter 21, verses 15 through 19. When they had finished breakfast, Jesus said to Simon Peter, "Simon, son of John, do you love me more than these?" He said to him, "Yes, Lord, you know that I love you." Jesus said to him, "Feed my lambs." A second time he said to him, "Simon, son of John, do you love me?" He said to him, "Yes, Lord, you know that I love you." Jesus said to him, "Tend my sheep." He said to him the third time, Simon, son of John, do you love me? Peter felt hurt because he said to him the third time, do you love me? And he said to him, Lord, you know everything. You know that I love you. Jesus said to him, feed my sheep. Very truly I tell you, when you were younger, you used to fasten your own belt and go wherever you wished. But when you grow old, you will stretch out your hands, and someone else will fasten a belt around you and take you where you do not wish to go. He said this to indicate the kind of death by which he would glorify God. After this he said to him, follow me. This is the word of the Lord.
Hey y'all, morning. Happy Sunday. It is so good to see you here with us at the Choir Church, and thanks to Tim for reading our scripture for today. On Wednesday night, I felt something different. AJ and I sat on our couch and we watched the entire press briefing with Jen Psaki live on CNN. And we felt hopeful. We felt confident. There will be challenges and tragedies and disagreements and missteps in the next few years, but for once in a long time, it felt like our leadership was not berating us. Before Wednesday, I felt overwhelmed. I felt flooded with content constantly, knowing that, especially in recent weeks, the top 3 stories in every feed would be COVID, violence, and transition of power. And I felt so flooded that for the past several months, I have completely stopped listening to my podcasts. I mean, if you know me, that's unbelievable. I've stopped listening to podcasts. I just can't do it. It's too much. This time period has been too much. Anyone else feel those things? And now we're in this shift, and yet the fatigue is still there. The hope may be rising, but the pain, the grief is still with us every minute. And I want to make space for that. And also in the din of all of this, I saw something remarkable. And it was the video by Arnold Schwarzenegger. Yes, Arnold Schwarzenegger made a remarkable video. Maybe you saw it too. And he was responding to the insurrection, the attempted coup at the Capitol on January 6th. And he issued a warning and also a call for hope and reflection to the events of that day. And in the video message, Arnold talked about growing up in Austria and the guilt and the trauma perpetuated in the aftermath of World War II. The global violence had led to local, domestic violence as men and families reckoned with their lived experiences. He said, and I quote, "Growing up, I was surrounded by broken men drinking away their guilt over their participation in the most evil regime in history. Now, I've never shared this so publicly because it is a painful memory, but my father would come home drunk once or twice a week. He would scream and hit us and scare my mother. I didn't hold him totally responsible because our neighbor was doing the same thing to his family. And so was the next neighbor over. They were in pain from the shrapnel in their bodies and emotional pain from what they saw or did." He goes on. He talks about how things spun out of control as the Nazis rose to power and encouraged Americans to work together to support the peaceful transition of power and do our part to reaffirm democracy. But what struck me about the video was not anything related to politics or the current moment, but it was that vulnerability. He said, "I've never shared this so publicly because it is a painful memory." He was opening up about something personal. He was sharing an experience that was sad. It was hurtful, and it surely reverberated throughout his life in the way he experienced friendship and intimacy and belonging. He was leading with vulnerability, being open about pain, because he believes that by doing so, he can change hearts and minds. He can lead to a transformation. Watching this video, of course, reminded me of one of our heroes, Brené Brown. It reminded me of her message and her research that says that the way to true connection comes from this kind of wholehearted living. The willingness to be vulnerable, we connect and we heal. And when we use that vulnerability in leadership, it creates opportunities for transformation in our work, transformation in community, transformation in political society. Are you following me? I watched this video of Arnold and I felt inspired. I felt moved by a sense of openness that was connected to a call that we joined together for more openness and vulnerability. This is a message and a spirit that I believe cuts right to the heart of what it means to be human, what is part of our wholeness, what is part of our holiness. So I want to talk about that some more today. I have a question for you. How many followers or friends or connections do you have on social media? Think about it. Across Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, Snapchat, wherever you go to connect with people online, how many people are you connected to in that scope of community online? Google tells me the average number of followers people have on Instagram is 150. On Facebook, it's 338. And I'm guessing most of us in our choir community have way more than 338 connections. Some of us has fewer. I think I have like 30 followers on Twitter, if that. And for the most part, we're on these platforms every day, right? 74% of Facebook users log in every day. 63% of Instagram users log in every day. 50% of YouTubers are on there every day. These spaces are driving our attention, our time, and our connections. So you hold that number of how many connections you have. And now I want you to think about a separate question. How many people do you consider to be your close friend? How many people would you say you're truly vulnerable with? How many people know the hard, ugly, fart-smelling things about you? I'm guessing that's a much smaller number. I mean, I think my wife is tired of me lamenting that all the time that I have no friends. I say it as a joke often because I'm an introvert and I don't really pursue friendship very naturally. But what I'm really saying when I say I have no friends is that there are few people in my life that I feel comfortable opening up with in a deep, meaningful way. It's a challenge. There are few people that I allow myself to be vulnerable with. Maybe some of you are like me. We have plenty of connections online. We have plenty of acquaintances, but not very much belonging. And that is painful. We have a lot of noise. We have likes and comments and attention, but is that hiding a deeper heartache and isolation? The relief to our aches is to find places of deep belonging, of deep knowing. And I believe that's what we see Jesus practicing with his followers all of the time. This week, we're looking at a passage in the book of John when Jesus asks Peter if he loves him and then gives him a call: feed my sheep. This is a pretty well-known passage. It's often used to help commission new pastors, so maybe you've heard it before, but to jog your memory, the last interaction before this passage that Jesus had with Peter was when Jesus was predicting a betrayal. He tells Peter, before the rooster crows 3 times, you will have betrayed me 3 times. And Jesus makes this prediction right as he's on his way to being turned over to the Romans and eventually to be crucified. And as part of that story, Peter fulfills the prediction. He denies he's associated with Jesus and his followers 3 times. And now, here he is. Jesus is crucified, he dies, he's buried, he rises again, and he is here with Peter before he ascends back to heaven. And I mean, how surprising for Peter, how angst-producing maybe. His leader, his rabbi, his Messiah that he has been following and serving for 3 years is the person that he has betrayed. He has disassociated himself in the moment when things were violent. They were scary, and Peter moved to save himself. And he had to grieve that that was his last interaction. It was 3 days from when Jesus died to when he rose again, that he had to sit with what he did. And then in a whirlwind, Christ is here. He is risen, and he is God, clearly. And in that moment, that overwhelming, mind-bending moment where Jesus is present again, he asks Peter, "Do you love me?" What a personal, intimate question. Do you love me? And Peter responds, he says, "You know I do." An intimate response, "You know that I do." Ask again, "Do you love me?" "Yes, I do." And by the 3rd round, "Do you love me?" Peter is hurt and he says, "You know everything, Jesus. You know that I love you." So often when I read this passage, I think of all the unspoken that must be happening here. It's not a very drawn out dialogue. It's not hours of conversation and reconciliation. There's a question, an answer, and then a call. There's a sense of hurt feelings and then a sense of closure. There's reconciliation, reconnection with not much having to be said, and it feels intimate, right? And I think part of that comes because of all the previous conversations Peter and Jesus had. But in particular, right before Jesus predicts the betrayal in John 13, he gives the disciples a new command. Just before he predicts Peter's betrayal, Jesus says, "Love one another. As I have loved you, so you must love one another. By this everyone will know that you are my disciples if you love one another." And Simon Peter asked him, "Lord, where are you going?" And Jesus replied, "Where I am going, you cannot follow now, but you will follow later." And Peter says, "Why can't I follow you now? I will lay down my life for you." And then Jesus answered, "Will you really lay down your life for me?" And then he makes the prediction about the betrayal. So right before Jesus makes this prediction of the breakdown, right, of the brokenness, of the disassociation, he calls his disciples to love. And then when he comes back to repair it, he's calling Peter to love. Love me, feed my sheep. He's circling back to that last conversation. Jesus knows Peter. He knew Peter would betray him. He knew how Peter reacts in the heat of the moment. He's a fiery guy. He knew that Peter would be hurt by that repeated question, but that is also what gave it deep meaning. A deep sense of knowing, a deep sense of belonging. It's not a moment that Peter can rush past. Can't push aside. He's drawn into a vulnerability. In this passage, we're seeing an interaction where not much is said, but volumes are communicated. And that's part of how Jesus makes space for love. It's from that deep place of knowing, that deep place of belonging, that Peter goes on to love and to lead. That's where the social transformation, the gospel transformation begins. He leads the whole church. He has a whole career following this. You know, I believe that there is something beautiful going on in this church because we have folks of different generations, different backgrounds, different races, all showing up with such consistency, such generosity of spirit, where we are really getting to know each other even though we're still only here in a virtual environment. We're building a foundation of friendship and getting to know each other that will serve this community far into the future. And as I've said before, an interesting thing about it that we've seen is that this environment of real connection is intimidating. we've scared some people off by the format we've been using in Zoom with discussion groups and all of that. And with our small but mighty group going, like I see it, I get it. The self-proclaimed antisocial introvert that I am, I likely would opt out if I weren't the pastor here. It's scary. It asks of a thing of you to be present here. It's a difficult choice to show up and participate in a real, authentic way where you can't hide in the back pew. And when we have to show up in these ways, it is so easy to second guess ourselves. We feel like we said something dumb or silly, we looked weird on the screen or whatever. We doubt, we overcompensate. We just feel some type of way. That's hard. I don't know what it feels like for you, but that feels like, for me sometimes, it feels vulnerable to show up here and share something real. I mean, we live in a world where the message is that you are important and known and even like economically viable if you have a ton of followers on Instagram. But the truth is, the unifying truth here that we find here is that there is more life and joy and fulfillment to be had in a group of 3 or 7 or 14 people truly getting to know each other than you could ever find on that transactional space. It's more healing and empowering and satisfying to belong in real life than it is to be a famous influencer, right? Because as we get to know each other, as we build trust, as we begin to share more openly, we will get to those things, to those places that are hard to share. We will open up about the painful memories, and as hard as that is, there's nothing more comforting than being able to share those things. You know, right now, millions of people are mourning lost loved ones. In the US, 400,000 people have died from COVID. And I know several of us have grieved the death of close family and friends from other causes as well as COVID in the last year. Grief is so hard. It's a sadness that comes in waves. It can be lonely. And it can also be deeply connecting. Grief connects us to real feeling and emotion. It can connect us to a sense of comfort. It can connect us to others who are willing to just let you be, just to be. You know, my advice for people who are trying to support others going through grief is that the best way to show up for someone who is grieving is to just let them be. Create a space for presence. But isn't that what we need all of the time? Whether we're grieving or not, just a space to be. You know, I'm estranged from my parents. It's an ambiguous loss that is easy to ignore sometimes, and ever-present grief at other times. But a while ago, maybe even a year ago, I mean, it was pre-COVID, Pat and Sherry, who we know in this community, had some of us over for an 80s versus 90s playlist competition. We listened to music, we talked, we laughed. And because Pat and Sherry are of an older generation, and they were just being with my family, and they were loving my kids, they were loving me, that simple night of just them having hospitality, it felt so relieving to me. And particularly something relieving about my relationship with my parents. It was so, in a simple way, it was healing this very complicated pain in my life. All they did was let AJ and I and our kids exist in their space. All they did was love us and have fun and dance and laugh. And you know, I just got to belong. And it was like a salve to my soul. It felt vulnerable, and it also felt freeing. And that's what we need. You know, there's nothing forced in that, in creating a space to be. There's no coercion. It's just a willingness to be present, a willingness to build trust, a willingness to share from the heart. You know, I like to say we want to encourage you to be open but not force vulnerability. Because when we get to that place of trust and belonging and openness, we create the space for the transformation of love and healing we all long for. A new command I give you: love one another as I have loved you. So you must love one another. By this you will know that by this everyone will know that you are Jesus' disciples, if you love one another. Amen? Amen.
Oh, I've heard 1,000 stories of what they think you're like, but I've heard a tender whisper of love in the dead of night, and you tell me that you're pleased and that I'm never alone. You're a good, good Father. It's who you are. It's who you are. It's who you are, and I'm loved by you. It's who I am. It's who I am. It's who I am. Oh, I've seen many searching for answers far and wide, but I know we're all searching for answers only you provide, 'cause you know just what we need before we say a word. You're a good, good Father. It's who you are. It's who you are. It's who you are, and I'm loved by you. It's who I am. It's who I am. It's who I am. 'Cause you're perfect in all of your ways. You're perfect in all of your ways. You are perfect in all of your ways to us. You are perfect in all of your ways. You are perfect in all of your ways. You are perfect in all of your ways to us. Oh, it's a love so undeniable, I can hardly speak. Peace so unexplainable, I can hardly think as you call me. Deeper still as you call me. Deeper still as you call me. Deeper still into love. Love. You're a good, good Father. It's who you are. It's who you are. It's who you are, and I'm loved by you. It's who I am. It's who I am. It's who I am. You're a good, good Father. It's who you are. It's who you are. It's who you are, and I'm loved by you. It's who I am. It's who I am. It's who I am.